Worcester Voices, a series of conversations with people who live, work, study, and create in Worcester. I'm Sophie Sundaram, a student at Holy Cross. For our fourth episode, I'm joined by Trang, owner of Mint Kitchen and Bar. Trang and her husband, Van Lee, and with the help of their children, Alex, Nick, and Vanessa, launched Mint in April of 2022 at 79 Maywood St, and have been making an impact, bringing Vietnamese and fusion cuisine to the Worcester community ever since. Last year, Mint Kitchen and Bar was also named Small Business of the Year at the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce Annual Business Awards. Trang, thank you for being here.
Oh, so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're not only a Worcester resident, but also a Worcester business owner and volunteer. How did your journey bring you to Worcester?
So I came to Worcester in 1982 as a refugee. So being in Worcester is like our starting new life for my family and I. We came here not knowing the language, not having much, but we had a lot of support and we persevered and we worked hard. Growing up in Worcester, I've learned that there's a lot of diversity in Worcester. It's a city that really embraces refugees and immigrants. So as an adult, I guess it has come full circle. And then especially opening a business like Mint, because now I'm in a position where I can give back and help others as in the way that I have been helped.
So one of my questions for you is about how Mint had a really long-awaited opening before a full-service restaurant was instated after the pandemic. And during the time before Mint opened, you volunteered with a lot of community groups like Worcester Refugee and Immigrant Food Pantry, Angel's Answer, Worcester Community Fridge, and the Southeast Asian Coalition of Central Massachusetts. And you also worked as a cultural broker at Worcester Interfaith. Could you tell listeners more about these community groups and your involvement?
I have always been very involved. Even before that time period, that time period was during the pandemic when everything was shut down. But always volunteering and doing things in the community has always been in my nature. So when everything shut down during the pandemic, I had plenty of time to be even more involved and do even more things. Each of those involvements kind of shaped how I view the way I run Mint now. So, like, for example, with the community fridges and the refugee and immigrant emergency food pantry that was started during the pandemic, that's about survival. That's about helping people have access to food. Through that, I learned that it should be done in a way where it not only gives people access, but to provide dignity for people. The SIGMA, which is the Southeast Asian Coalition, through that's about identity and culture. So something I did in collaboration with them was to cook and provide culturally appropriate meals during the pandemic. We mostly cooked and provided meals for elders and then people that are affected by the pandemic. So we cooked Vietnamese meals because most of the clients through that organization is Vietnamese or other Asian. And so that's what we did. So that's how that's culturally relevant. And then so my work with Worcester Interfaith was to closely help families, especially the refugees and the immigrant families, to overcome barriers that they were facing during the pandemic. So we did a lot of work with helping families access like protection gears while everybody was dealing with the
masks and stuff like that.
Yeah. So masks, hand sanitizers, stuff like that. And then eventually when the vaccines were created, helping people to get access to that. Because if you remember during that time, everybody was scared.
And it could be very hard to get a vaccine also.
Exactly. It was very, very hard. That work was to kind of help people navigate that barrier and try to have access to that. Because unfortunately, not everybody had access to it. So that's the work that I did during that time period.
That's so interesting. And I think it seems to kind of inform your approach to food and community at Mint as well, you've talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So through all of that, those experiences, I've learned that food is something that is not just something that you serve. It's something that brings people together through different communities, different cultures. So especially during difficult times.
That's so interesting. And sort of bouncing off of that, one of the other things I was curious about is you volunteered at Southeast Asian Coalition of Central Massachusetts, SIGMA, during the pandemic, cooking meals that were delivered to Latino and Asian families and, you know, continuing to feed seniors and people with COVID even. And I was wondering if you could tell us about this experience and your continued engagement with the seniors in the Worcester community.
To me, helping out seniors is a really important thing to do. Oftentimes, seniors get overlooked. They don't have families or others that they can depend on. So I've always made it a point, even now, to always make sure that I'm assisting seniors and doing what I can. Even now, every week, like I would deliver food to this senior housing complex. And every week, they would come out and wait for me to come. And I've been doing that since even I opened Mint, but even with my schedule now, I still continue to do it because it's something I believe in doing, making sure that these seniors get the assistance.
Yeah, I think that makes such a great impact on the people, I'm sure. And I'm kind of interested also, for those who may not know, what is the Worcester Regional Food Hub and program launching diverse food entrepreneurs? And what impact has it had on the local restaurant industry? Because I know it's had an impact on Mint.
It was never really my intention to open a restaurant. It just came about, even though I'm always very involved in food, like all my life experiences, like all my volunteer work has always been centered around food. It has to do with food, I'm there. And so when I saw a post about launching a food entrepreneur program, actually it was called the Diverse Food Entrepreneur Program, I was very interested. So I applied for that and I got accepted and I went through the program. From that, was like where the idea of opening the restaurant eventually started budding. The Food Hub, basically, it's like a commercial kitchen space that helps and supports individuals to kind of take the ideas that they may have about opening a restaurant and then taking it from ideas to eventually giving them the tools to launch their business if that was the direction that they wanted to take. But it's like a more economical and safe space for people to try out an idea. Because takes a lot to open a restaurant. It costs so much money. And sometimes there are many barriers to opening a restaurant. So the Food Hub, it affords people the opportunity to just explore their ideas, and then try it out, and to be eventually maybe be able to open a restaurant. And then for some people, it's not what they want to do. And after doing the experiments at the Food Hub, they might decide, oh no, that's not for me. That's not what I want to do.
That's so interesting. And so what was your experience of the Food Hub? When you finished the program, did you know immediately that you wanted to set up a business and find a space, or how did that process go?
So actually, it didn't happen immediately. And also it was because of the timing too. So at the time, I was taking care of my dad, who was elderly and he had dementia, and he was wheelchair bound. And then also it was during the time of the pandemic too, because when I took the food program, it was like the very first one that just launched. And that took place in 2019. So when the program ended, like after we were all certified and, ready to spread our wings and fly, that was when everything got shut down. So towards the end of that, like nobody was able to do anything. And that's where like all my experience with all the volunteers came in, all the volunteering work. And so when there was a need to distribute food, and when there was a need to cook the hot meals, I just jumped right in and did that. So there was a pause on the potential business side, but then I kind of just like took that passion and then applied it towards the community. The idea of opening a mint kind of evolved from all those experiences, because after the hot meal program ended, it was kind of like towards the end of the pandemic when it was ending. That was when like somebody approached me and offer a contract to provide hot meals for like the Vietnamese elder community in an adult day health center setting. And so that's what I started doing. And that was also the time when my family and I started working together, because it's a lot to cook, like hundreds of meals every week. Yeah. So, and I'm not the one with the prior professional kitchen experience. It's my husband that has that experience. So he was recruited to volunteer with me. And then our children also helped out too. So that was kind of the start of when our family started working together, as far as the food aspect of our life. And then, so that's how it got started with the whole food business. So when I started cooking for the Adult Day Health program, we didn't have a restaurant back then at the time. So that was when the Food Hub was really useful. So we actually used the Food Hub kitchen to cook the meals for that. And we grew to the point where we needed our own space. The space that we are in now, when that became available, we decided to bring our business there. And that's how Mint came to be about.
Yeah, it's so interesting. That's a great story. I think of how, you started in this program and you weren't thinking of going into food necessarily in this kind of business way, and then it ended up being that, even through a slightly longer route maybe. And then thinking about Mint, now that we've kind of established that, Mint happened, why did you choose Mint Kitchen and Bar as the restaurant name?
That was actually a very intentional decision. So simply put, mint, the herb mint, it's refreshing and it's vibrant, and it's widely used in not only Vietnamese cuisine, but a lot of different other cuisines as well. And not even just cuisine, like it's used in other products where it symbolizes freshness. And that's what I wanted, the image that I wanted to create, like freshness. Like I want people to think of that when they think of Mint Kitchen and Bar, of our food. During that period, like we were coming out of the pandemic, and I thought that the mint plant is very symbolic in a way that we're bringing a new business into the city, into the community. Because I wanted to create a space that is vibrant and fresh, and it's just growing out of this depressing era that we just came out of. So that is why I picked the name Mint.
So could you describe your experience bringing Vietnamese authentic flavors to the community while also exploring fusion flavors? I'm curious how you envision this cross-cultural exchange, especially given your background coming from northern Vietnam, but also having lived in the southern part of the country.
I guess this kind of relates to why I picked the name Mint, because I wanted to introduce something fresh and new and vibrant to our community. Yes, I know that there are many Vietnamese restaurants in Worcester already, especially in the same neighborhood that I'm in, but the menu and the approach that we were bringing is fresh and new and vibrant, in the sense that we wanted to focus on more northern Vietnamese cuisine, because my family is from northern Vietnam. And if you look at the menus of the other Vietnamese restaurants around here, they're more southern Vietnamese focused. So the difference between the northern Vietnamese cuisine and the southern Vietnamese cuisine, there's actually a big difference. So the northern Vietnamese cuisine is the flavor is more subtle and more balanced, whereas the southern Vietnamese cuisine is more like bold. So having like the northern root, and then growing up in southern Vietnam and then eating southern Vietnamese food around the Worcester area, I came to kind of like combine the two different flavors, like to make it more balanced. So that's the way that we cook now at Mint, like with that combination of the balance of the two. And then as far as like your question about the fusion, so we wanted to make sure that we keep the food authentic. So like our menu that we have now, they're actually items that we ate growing up. Like they're things that I made for my kids. Actually, like the food menu that we came up with, my son Alex had a lot of influence on that. Like he chose the dishes that I made when they were children. And growing up, things that he liked to eat. So it was important to me to keep the dishes authentic. But then the fusion part is kind of like the story of us living in a new land in America, and kind of like incorporating some of those other elements of food into our traditional food. So, but in the end, like I still think it's important that we keep to like the true roots of the food. You know, like we still have to make sure like the appearance of it, the taste of it, still it reflects its original root. I still keep the true integrity of the dish. Maybe just like presenting it in a different way.
You mentioned before that Mint is a family-owned business, and your son Alex and your husband Vanley work with you in the kitchen, and I think your son Nick oversees the front of house and bar. and Vanessa makes the desserts from, right?
Yes.
With homemade ube ice cream with the cornflake crunchies, I think, being a fan favorite.
It absolutely is.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the process of building a family business? And you mentioned how you sort of got working together, but I would love to know a little bit more about, what it looks like maybe on a given day all working together.
Well, I can tell you it wasn't easy. It was a long and difficult process. Because, when you're working with your family, everybody has their own ideas. Everybody have a way if they want to do things, and everybody always knows best. And, in the end, I guess, what we were able to work out is that everybody have their strengths. And that's kind of what helped build the foundation, is that us understanding that we need to enable each person to use their own strength. And that's why we came up with those separations. Like with Alex, he enjoys being in the back of the house. Nick enjoys being in the front of the house. Like Vanessa, she's really good with desserts. That was how that came about. But it was a long process, and we learned a lot along the way. But I guess the best achievement we got from that was that everybody was able to contribute to build up, not just a business, but something for our family and our future. At this point, my children are all doing their own things now. After they kind of got the mid established and kind of stable, but they're still available, for support whenever Mint needs them.
That's so great. Yeah, I think it's so interesting to work with your family and bring in all the talents that you mentioned and divide them up. And so we've been talking a lot about Mint, but apart from working at Mint, you're also an active food educator, and you teach classes in Vietnamese and sometimes different kinds of fusion cuisine. And what made you want to teach? And then how does your teaching inform your work back at Mint?
I actually really enjoy the teaching part of what I do. It's an opportunity for me to share my culture and the stories behind the food. Because at Mint, every dish that we chose on the menu, it's intentional. But it's so fast-paced that I don't always have the time to stop and talk to people. So that was why I decided to do the cooking workshops. There are people who are very interested in learning, not just about the food, but I thought it was just really important for people to learn about the process, because Vietnamese food is very complex. There's just so many steps and ingredients, and I just thought it would be kind of cool to show people, these are all the steps that you have to take. These are the things that you have to do to get a particular dish on the table. So that's why I started doing that, and I really enjoy doing it, not just because it allows me to do the storytelling and the sharing, but it also allows me to grow as well. Because every single time I do a workshop, I learn from the participants as well. Like at Mint or at the library or at schools that I do it at the teaching kitchen that I did in Chelsea. So at the teaching kitchen in Chelsea, I learned so much from the participants there. And I've learned that there's a lot of cross-cultural things. A lot of similar ingredients are used, and then maybe sometimes the method's a little bit different, or the combination of the ingredients are a little bit different. But through all of that, I have grown and learned a lot too. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a great experience. I would love to go to one of the cooking classes at Mint. I know that you did a dumpling, I think, class at some point, and different kinds of classes.
Yeah.
And then also apart from Mint, but kind of adjacent, you also own the company and catering, which I think translates to eat in Vietnamese or something like that.
Yeah, so that's what I started out doing. And that's why I was approached to do the contract for the providing the meals. Because so right after finishing the food entrepreneur program, like without having a storefront or without like proper funding and all of that, I just started out small. So that's why I created An Catering. So I named it An because An just means to eat.
Yeah.
Like in its simplest form, it just means to eat. But like in Vietnamese, or I guess in any culture, like eating is more than just like the act of consuming food. Like through eating there's just so much more. It's like the opportunity to share stories, share experiences, and it's just a lot deeper in meaning than just simply to get full from the food. So that's why I decided to choose that name for that. So for our catering, we wanted to focus more on traditions. So for when I do catering, I offer more traditional menus, like stuff that they're not. I mean, I can cater food that's on the mid menu if that's what people request, but like my idea of providing catering at An is a lot more like food that people will reach out to me for when they're celebrating something meaningful and something special, like be it weddings or birthdays or even funerals or, anything that's like deeply meaningful where people want that traditional food that they wouldn't be able to find elsewhere. I mean, even if you're not Vietnamese and you're not looking for something very, very traditional, it could be something new to somebody. Like if somebody has an event and they wanted to introduce new food or they just really enjoy Vietnamese food, I wanted to be the one that provides that. And I have done that with a few events, like wedding celebrations, where people that are not Vietnamese that had approached me because they wanted that type of menu. And I've gotten a lot of really good feedback from all of these clients. So that's something that like I take a lot of pride in. Being the only Vietnamese caterer in Worcester area is something that I take a lot of pride in.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility also.
Yeah.
You're the go-to, but also really exciting. And, speaking of, Mint's excellence and all of that, Mint Kitchen and Bar was also recently named Small Business of the Year, the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce Annual Business Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And how has this award influenced your business?
I'm really grateful to have been awarded this reward, and I give a lot of credits to all the people that have supported me throughout this journey. I have staff that have been with me since day one. So shout out to Nicole. She was there with us even before we opened. And then even like with like my current staff, they're there to help us every single day on a daily basis to help us succeed. And then even just apart from like this Mint family, our staff, the community, they've really given us a lot of support to be able to grow to where we are now.
Yeah, no, I think that's really amazing how much it's that community that's kind of brought you this place, this really amazing award. And, thinking about all the success that Mint has had so far and getting this award and, being the Vietnamese catering place also and all the things that you've done, what is a piece of advice that you wish other small businesses would know about starting out?
I think it's important to keep at the top of your mind the why. So everybody has a purpose or a reason why they created a business, right? So I think it's important to always remember, why did I do this? I mean, I guess any business, but especially in the restaurant industry, it's tough. There are a lot of challenges. And things change every day. So in order to kind of keep your composure and stay ahead of the challenges, or in order to overcome the challenges, I think it's important to remember your purpose, like the why you started doing this in the first place.
I think that's great advice. So do you have any advice for students or the community on how they can get involved?
I think my advice to students or anyone in the community who wants to be involved is just to get started. Sometimes people feel like they don't know what to do or they're not ready. Sometimes you can't wait until you're ready. Sometimes you have to just jump in and do it. Just go around, find out what interests you. There are many organizations that you could help out with, and there's a lot of help that's needed. Just go out there, meet people, ask questions, and just be open. I think being open-minded and being open to meeting new people and doing new things, because you never know. Like, sometimes the least expected interactions could lead to like your most important or memorable experiences or connections.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. So is there anything that I didn't ask that you'd want to add? Some final thoughts?
So I'm really glad that I was able to build up Mint and create a space for people to come. Because to me, Mint is not just a restaurant, it's a community space. And in creating that community space, it has allowed people to have a place where not only to come and taste delicious Vietnamese food, but to come and gather and providing a safe space for people to come and do fundraisers if they needed to, for organizations to come and hold meetings. And I've really enjoyed having met so many people from all different walks of life, because Worcester is a college town. There are so many colleges in the city, and I've crossed paths with so many different people, and I'm really fortunate to have met so many. And having been here 4 years, I think this is the first year where we have the first class that's been here all 4 years.
Oh, wow. That's really special.
Yeah. So we have students that have been coming since their freshman year, have been brand new in Worcester. And they've spent 4 years of their life here. And then now they're moving on with whatever their future brings. And it's nice to see. Actually, I have event schedule with senior event schedule with the local colleges. Wow. Where they wanted to come to Mint and have their final celebration.
Oh, that's so it's kind of great.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice.
That's really special. So we've seen so many things, so many interesting things from this interview with Trang Lee. We've learned about her engagement with the community and different seniors in the community and organizations. We've learned about her involvement in the Woo Fridges, which is also something that Holy Cross students can help with. And we've learned a lot about Vietnamese cuisine, fusion cuisine, and making a family business. Thank you again, Trang, for joining us on Worcester Voices.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share my story.
For our listeners, I want to remind you that community is something we create together when we stay curious, lead with compassion, and choose connection.